I'm Jake Rogers and my project over Van Halen. Van Halen formed back in 1972 is comprised of Eddie Van Halen and Alex Van Halen, who were obviously brothers, David Lee Roth and Michael Anthony. It was said also that Eddie and Alex Van Halen, they originally didn't play the instruments they did. Alex didn't really used to play drums, and neither did Eddie play the guitar. He used to play the opposite ones, and one was always Eddie was always sneaking over and trying to play his guitar. So eventually he decided on to play drums. And eventually they adopted the name of Van Halen in '74 because they realized that another band was using the same name they were going under, which was Genesis. So they chose Van Halen, feeling that the name was a little more powerful. And they played all throughout Pasadena, California. Within a few years, they were pretty much known as a very highly respected and well-known local band. And one time, actually, Gene Simmons, if you know from Kiss, he actually saw them playing one time, and he financed their first demo album back in '77. David Lee Roth was with the band for quite a while, up to about the mid-1980s. And their first studio albums, the first 6, went multi-platinum, which pretty much means they sold like over like 10,000 million songs. Not 10,000 million, sorry, 10 million. And they signed Warner Brothers Pictures for most of, at the time, up to about maybe the turn of the century. And they eventually went into the Guinness Book of World Records for the highest paid single appearance, about $1.5 million for just 90 minutes on a show. When 1984, if you actually, this album right here, that was actually the name of it, was 1984, came out with one of their biggest hits, Jump, which became the band's only #1 pop single. It also utilized the use of synthesizers and other crazy techniques that was very different from the band, but still became popular, especially around the 80s. And eventually, in '85, David Lee Roth was fired due to tensions, especially between him and Eddie Van Halen. A lot of partying-wise and antics, and the crowd, it was very obvious for a few years there was a breakup in sight. Eventually, Sammy Hagar came along right around '86, and he was known a lot for his hit single, I Can't Drive 55. So, if any of you have heard that, that's pretty much what he was known for before he joined Van Halen. His first album, 5150, with the band, was the first one to reach #1, and all the albums that he did release with Eddie Van Halen and the rest of the band hit #1 on the charts. They were nominated for 2 Grammys and actually won the 1992 Best Hard Rock Performance Vocal Award. And the first live album was released in '93, which also went multi-platinum. Now, in '96, there was a lot of controversy of Hagar quitting and being fired. Hagar said that he was fired, but the rest of the band said that he quit. So to this day, pretty much no one really knows why exactly, but everyone kind of thinks it's because the band was actually secretly recording with their original singer, David Lee Roth, and he didn't like that. Most of the late '90s up through about even the first few years of the new century, they were kind of on hiatus. They had one album released with Gary Sharon, and it wasn't really anything big. It was actually considered probably one of their worst albums, which was considered Van Halen 3. And they had so much new material that was never made. They actually recorded a bunch of material worth about 3 albums, and then it was made after Gary Sharon left the band. So all the material was never used. And they didn't release another studio album for about 14 years. After '96 was when they released their only album with Gary Sharon. And it was also a really hard time, especially leading into the 21st century. Eddie went a lot in for rehab, for alcohol, and he got divorced after his wife of 21 years. In 2006, David Lee Roth came back and rejoined the band. And also the year after, inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in '07. It was really controversial for a long time, as in the '90s, if Roth was really in the band or not. He thought he was, and also the press thought he was too. but eventually it turned out he wasn't. He was just back for a short time. But this time he actually did come back. And in 2012 they released their first album, in about 14 years, A Different Kind of Truth, which had a lot more of the same sound that the very early Van Halen did rather than the late Van Halen.